Welcome to Just a Sliver. This is a bonus track to Episode 6, Management 101. I knew when I was recording and even planning Management 101, I knew I was going to have to do a Just a Sliver because it is massive, and even when I've been speaking to people that have listened to the podcast, there is so much to unpack. And I may have ruffled some feathers with some of the terminology that I had used. However, I stand by it. I meant what I said, and I know that 90% of the people out there are thinking the exact same thing because we've all suffered at the hand of poor management. So there's a few things that I wanted to expand on in this Just a Sliver. One of them being learned helplessness. An amazing theory, and there have been books that have been written about this learned helplessness. The definition: learned helplessness occurs when a person who has experienced repeated challenges comes to believe they have no control over their situation. They then give up trying to make changes and affect their fate. There certainly is always a comeback from people that have suffered this learned helplessness. But I know that managers and frontline entry-level staff members alike we've all suffered this. And it's a horrible place to be. Imagine going to work and feeling helpless. So what can we do to turn that around? It just so happens that there is the opposite to learned helplessness, and it's called learned optimism. And I think that the best way, after doing some research online, is to reverse this. It's about realistic optimism. And it will definitely require some prior planning because you don't want to set out tasks that will then further hamper what you're trying to do. You want some wins that the staff can chalk up on the board. That's why it needs to be realistic. I remember when working at a large hotel that the amount of check-ins we would have on a Friday and a Saturday, they were overwhelming. But what was important is that we will always get through it because these guests 100% need to go somewhere. So regardless of the hurdles that we were going to face in between, they were all going to get a room. So it's that leap forward to the fact that, hey, we will get through this. And that's where that positive encouragement comes through. Your staff members are going to be certainly better for it because instead of moping around, they're going to be pumped to get to the end of it. And another key takeaway here is for management to be present. Assist your staff in getting through the challenges. One big mistake I think a lot of managers make is that they're looking at their work week Monday to Friday and 9 till 5. If you've got a busy period at, say, 3 to 5 on a Friday, don't schedule meetings in that time. And I'm certainly guilty of that. I certainly had not planned it myself. Sometimes it was out of my control. However, I still went to these meetings and left my staff on the front line without guidance. And that is disheartening for staff members. And I think last up for learned helplessness is to normalize imperfections. We are all going to make mistakes. Staff are going to make mistakes. Managers make mistakes. So I think that obviously, depending on the severity of the mistake, there needs to be a little coaching there. Because unless the staff member has gone out of their way to intentionally mess up, their failure is actually your failure. Were you not there? Were they not trained adequately? So again, it's that reflection. How can I have prevented this? Another point I wanted to address was the bad apple effect. We all know the saying, one bad apple can ruin the bunch. So I think that, and it certainly can lead to the learned helplessness. So we all know that bad apple. I think it's important for staff to know that their managers have their back and trust that they will address this problem. Because you will have the weaker members of staff that will just follow suit. Because it's much easier to whinge about something than actually do something about it. So they will sit there and they will fester, and it will grow until you have one rotten pool of staff, and that is not going to assist you moving forward. And guilty of it myself, I know that there were certain members of staff that I was avoiding because it's certainly difficult to have these uncomfortable conversations. And unfortunately, there will have to be some type of a consequence if they continue with this poor behavior. However, I think it's important to address it, even to simply acknowledge it with the staff member that is causing this disruption. And a lot of this has to do with communication and having regular catch-ups with your staff members to understand their grievances and their wins and where they think there could be some improvements to make their life, and in turn, your life, much easier. And finally, addressing the feedback that I got in relation to being too harsh on management. I was informed that I was possibly typecasting all managers, and certainly not something I set out to do. I think what really is at the core of that headspace I was in was, unfortunately, there are more bad managers out there than there are good. And I know that that is a sensational claim. However, just going off of my time in big and small business, unfortunately, I've had more poor managers, and I speak to my siblings and my friends. And unfortunately, just with that research alone, it seems that there are so many bad managers out there. How do you break that cycle? That's the problem. And I think it ends with us. We need to call out that bad management, and you will have to possibly start from the bottom, or you will have to remove yourself from that situation. I've had to do this because I knew there was no changing my status and my beliefs and my feelings at a particular company. So I removed myself from there, and I worked on my personal brand. I reevaluated what was important to me, because what was important to me when I was at this company was their success. And our goals didn't align, which is difficult in a big business, that's for sure. And there is an element to towing the line. However, it just didn't fit with me anymore. So if you are having trouble trying to change the trajectory of poor management, unfortunately, there's only, so many concussions you can give yourself. And you may have to come to the fact that you will need to remove yourself from this toxic behavior and work on yourself, align yourself with people and industry and managers that have similar ethos to you. It's a big change. However, I would give it a go wherever you are managing. And if it doesn't change and you're unable to be this beacon of hope for everyone, because that is exhausting, to be the only one that is trying to drive change, real change. So it's a shout out to all of those phenomenal managers out there. Deep down, you know who you are. And deep down, those managers that are putting themselves in this good manager basket, if you don't belong there, remove yourself from it, because we don't want you. Well, that wraps it up. Thanks for joining me for Just a Sliver, Management 101. Thanks for coming back. And if you're listening to this and you hadn't listened to the full Management 101 podcast, head to your favorite podcast platform and give it a listen along with the other 5 episodes. See you soon.